Welcome back. You are watching Eagle News International from Canada. I'm Tiffany Elisasis from Calgary, Alberta. Dr. Anthony Fauci, the director of the U.S. National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Disease, recently participated in an online interview hosted by Hawaii's Lieutenant Governor Josh Green. They discussed a wide range of topics, from reopening the economy to addressing challenges that are unique to the Aloha State. Eagle News correspondent Milo Arsenis from our Hawaii Bureau has more.
Earlier today, Dr. Anthony Fauci repeated some updated guidance on just how deadly the coronavirus can still be, even when the necessary precautions are already being taken.
When you say aerosol, that means that these respiratory particles, they don't immediately go to the ground. They have the capability of floating around anywhere from many seconds to minutes, or maybe even longer, which means that being just 6 feet away isn't necessarily the total protection. You've got to wear a mask, number one, and you've got to remember that if you're indoors, it is much more difficult to escape infection when there's aerosol spread, because it continues to recirculate. If I'm in this room and there's no really good circulation in and out, you can have that droplet that go around for several minutes. So just being 6 feet apart is not going to help you. And there's been demonstrations of people in restaurants who are sitting way distance from somebody on the other end of the restaurant. One person is infected, and then you wind up, this person who never came near that person winds up getting infected, which tells you, underscores the two things that I've been telling you. One, wear a mask. Number two, outdoors always better than indoors. And if you're going to be indoors, keep the windows open.
Dr. Fauci also shared some troubling statistics on those that may be infected with COVID-19, but are not experiencing symptoms.
It is estimated that between 40 and 45% of the people who are infected do not have symptoms. That is a substantial proportion, particularly when you do the modeling. You can estimate that, again, a substantial proportion of the infections that occur are from an asymptomatic infected person to an uninfected person. So if that large a percentage is asymptomatic, you have a big problem in identifying, when you have community spread, about who is spreading the infection around.
The 79-year-old Brooklyn native even acknowledged Hawaii's challenges in enforcing safety measures, especially social distancing and going on quarantine if infected.
I could almost feel how frustrating that must be, because you're not going to change the way people have lived for forever, a traditional way that families and communities live. So the best thing that you can do is to try and prevent the community spread to get high enough that would make those, multi-generational 20-plus members in a single household, you don't want to just throw them out of the house. I mean, they've got to live the way they're going to live. So you really want to try as best you can to keep the infection away. It's almost like protecting the vulnerable. And I would imagine that there would be a substantial proportion of the people in that multi-generational home that are in the elderly class and are having underlying comorbidities. I mean, it almost has to be by statistics alone, because you're going to have grandma and grandpa and maybe even great-grandma and great-grandpa in that home.
The two doctors also talked about Hawaii's plans to allow pre-travel testing, as well as balancing priorities in enforcing safety precautions while also reopening the economy.
So a 14-day quarantine in a location that depends on tourism is a real tough one, because most people have 2 weeks of vacation. They don't want to spend it locked up in a hotel, no matter how beautiful the hotel is. So what I would do is I would do something, but it doesn't necessarily mean 14 days. In other words, I can understand the anxiety of people on the island saying, You know, if you just do a test 72 hours earlier, and that's all you do, that's not going to be enough. I mean, you're just anxious. But again, you don't want to go and quarantine everybody. That would hurt the tourism business. But you mentioned 2 or 3 things that are worthwhile. You can either get the really cheap, rapid, not that sensitive test and test everybody that comes through quickly, bango, and not like a really expensive, total amplification PCR. You're not going to get everybody, but statistically, you're going to dramatically diminish the likelihood that an infected person enters. Or you can do what you suggest, surveillance. Don't test everybody, but pick out representative ones to see what's coming into the country, and special attention to people that might have been at greater risk, like college students coming back from hot areas.
Finally, Dr. Fauci shared the latest in the government's efforts in developing a vaccine against the virus.
The United States government has made major investments in 6 vaccine candidates, 5 of which are already in advanced phase 3 trial. We have a safe and effective vaccine by November or December. The reality is, no matter what you do, there are going to be infected people who slip through the cracks. It's inevitable. It's going to happen. The critical issue is that since you have such a low level of infection right now, that you should be able to handle that and prevent that from blipping up. I mean, you've got to be able to prevent that from happening.
Reporting from Honolulu, Hawaii, I'm Yua Sanas for Eagle News. We live in interesting times.